Israel and Palestine conflict.
The Israel-Palestine conflict is one of the most protracted and contentious conflicts in modern history, deeply rooted in historical, religious, and territorial disputes. Spanning over a century, it has led to numerous wars, diplomatic tensions, and human rights violations. Understanding the complexities of this conflict requires delving into its historical background, key events, geopolitical dynamics, and the aspirations and grievances of both sides. Historical background. The roots of the Israel-Palestine conflict can be traced back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, with the rise of Zionism and Arab nationalism in the Middle East. Zionism, a movement advocating for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, gained momentum in Europe, particularly in response to anti-Semitic persecution. In 1917, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration, expressing support for establishing a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This declaration occurred during World War I when Britain sought support from Jewish communities and Zionist leaders. Following the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, Britain obtained a mandate over Palestine from the League of Nations in 1922. During this period, Jewish immigration to Palestine increased significantly, leading to escalating tensions with the Arab population. Partition and the creation of Israel. In 1947, the United Nations proposed a partition plan for Palestine, recommending the division of the territory into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international control. While Jewish leaders accepted the plan, Arab leaders rejected it, viewing it as unjust and a violation of their rights. In May 1948, shortly after the British withdrawal, Israel declared its independence, leading to the First Arab-Israeli War. Arab states intervened, aiming to prevent the establishment of Israel and to support the Palestinian Arab population. The war resulted in the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, who became refugees in neighboring countries. Wars and occupations. Since its establishment, Israel has fought several wars with its Arab neighbors, including the Suez Crisis, 1956, the Six-Day War, 1967, the Yom Kippur War, 1973, and conflicts with Lebanon and Gaza. The Six-Day War, in particular, was a turning point, during which Israel occupied the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. These territories have since been the focus of much of the conflict, with Israel establishing settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which are considered illegal under international law. Peace process and Oslo Accords. Efforts to resolve the Israel-Palestine conflict through diplomacy have been ongoing for decades. The Oslo Accords, signed in 1993, were a significant milestone, establishing a framework for negotiations between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO. The accords aimed to achieve a two-state solution, with Israel and a Palestinian state coexisting side by side. However, the Oslo process faced numerous challenges, including continued violence, settlement expansion, and disagreements over core issues such as borders, Jerusalem, refugees, and security. Despite periodic attempts at peace negotiations, a final resolution has remained elusive. Gaza and Hamas. The Gaza Strip, home to a large Palestinian population, has been a focal point of conflict, particularly since Israel's unilateral withdrawal in 2005. Following the withdrawal, Hamas, an Islamist militant group, seized control of Gaza, leading to a blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt. The blockade, along with recurrent conflicts between Hamas and Israel, has led to humanitarian crises, with Gaza suffering from severe poverty, unemployment, and limited access to basic services. Periodic escalations of violence, including rocket attacks from Gaza and Israeli military operations, have further exacerbated tensions. Jerusalem and religious significance. Jerusalem holds immense religious significance for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, making it one of the most contentious issues in the conflict. Israel considers Jerusalem its undivided capital, following its annexation of East Jerusalem in 1967, a move not recognized by the international community. Palestinians seek East Jerusalem as the capital of their future state. The status of holy sites, including the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Western Wall, has been a source of frequent clashes and diplomatic disputes. The Trump administration's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and relocate the U.S. embassy there in 2017 further inflamed tensions. Settlements and annexation. Israeli settlements in the West Bank are considered illegal under international law and have been a major obstacle to peace efforts. The expansion of settlements, along with the construction of the Israeli West Bank barrier, has fragmented Palestinian territory and undermined the viability of a future Palestinian state. In 2020, the Israeli government announced plans to annex parts of the West Bank, sparking international condemnation and concerns about the viability of a two-state solution. While the annexation plans were temporarily suspended under pressure from the United States and other countries, the issue remains unresolved. International responses and diplomatic efforts. The Israel-Palestine conflict has been the subject of extensive international attention and diplomatic efforts. Various peace initiatives, including those led by the United States, the United Nations, the European Union, and regional actors, have sought to broker agreements between the parties. However, these efforts have often been hindered by deep-seated mistrust, divergent interests, and conflicting narratives. The lack of progress has led to frustration among Palestinians, who feel increasingly marginalized and disillusioned with the peace process. Human rights and humanitarian concerns. The Israel-Palestine conflict has taken a heavy toll on civilian populations, with both Israelis and Palestinians experiencing violence, displacement, and restrictions on their rights. Palestinians living under Israeli occupation face systemic discrimination, land confiscation, movement restrictions, and military checkpoints. Human rights organizations have documented numerous violations, including extrajudicial killings, house demolitions, arbitrary arrests, and the use of excessive force against protesters. Israeli civilians, particularly those living in communities near the Gaza Strip, have also been affected by rocket attacks and incursions by militant groups. The future of the conflict. The Israel-Palestine conflict remains one of the most intractable and complex conflicts in the world today, with no easy solutions in sight. The failure to achieve a negotiated settlement has perpetuated cycles of violence, deepened divisions, and hindered prospects for peace and reconciliation. The path to a resolution lies in addressing the underlying grievances and aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians, recognizing their right to self-determination, and finding mutually acceptable compromises on key issues such as borders, refugees, Jerusalem, and security. International support and pressure will be crucial in pushing the parties towards meaningful negotiations and sustainable peace agreements. Ultimately, resolving the Israel-Palestine conflict will require bold leadership, political will, and a commitment to justice, equality, and human rights for all people in the region. Only through genuine dialogue, cooperation, and a shared vision of peace can the cycle of violence and suffering be brought to an end, paving the way for a brighter and more secure future for Israelis and Palestinians alike.